the Bible, when it talks about hell, it says there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And he talks about the gnashing. He goes, when do you gnash your teeth? He's like, when you intensely regret something, you're like, ah. And that, what you just said, imagine you meet the person and it's, you see what you could have been and you have this intense regret. That's hell. You gnash your teeth, you're like, oh, because you just regret so bad. And that's really it. It's the pain of discipline versus the pain of regret. There's the two types of pain. We have to embrace the pain of discipline every day to avoid the pain of regret.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another amazing, very exciting episode of the Superhuman Life. As always, guys, I'm your host, Frank Rich. And guys, we are coming up on 100 episodes. I know I've been talking about it for the last couple weeks now. Here we are, episode 98. What an incredible conversation we have for you today. And to honor and celebrate, hitting that 100 episode milestone, which I believe it's a major milestone. How many podcasts start and stop and never make it to 10, never make it to 20, never make it to 50. Very few actually get to 100 episodes. So yeah, I'm going to continue to talk about it until we reach it. And probably after the fact, I'll continue to talk about it as well. But one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to bring back on some of our favorite conversations, some of our favorite guests from the past. And today we have a returning guest. We have Rob Kowalski in the house, returning back from episode 36. For those of you that don't know Rob is the CEO and founder of the nonprofit organization known as CityFam, which we get into the story and genesis kind of behind how he started it, why he started it, what he saw the gap in the communities, what it was, and how he came up with a solution. Now, Rob is also a reformed bad boy. We unpacked it a lot in the first episode. From the age of 15, he had one goal in life, and it was to be a male stripper, and he hit that, and he became the biggest male stripper, the most popular, most famous in the Baltimore, Maryland area. And then through radical encounter with Jesus, he turned his life around, and today he's a best-selling author, he's a podcast host, he's a founder of a nonprofit, global speaker, and YouTubers as well. And so we get today we get into story behind CityFam. Then we really get into a method that Rob has created and is in the process of building and rolling out to churches, known as the Go Method. So we want to talk a little bit about, where is the church falling short? Like, why is the church losing members at the fastest rate ever? Why are they getting fewer and fewer people joining their church and being saved every single year? So we needed to identify what that problem is. Why is it existing? And then let's talk about the solution. What can leaders do? What can men do? What can pastors do? What can people in their community do to help bring more people to Jesus, to help bring more people to the cross so that they can be saved and that they can live in eternity with heaven. So we unpack the Go Method, and we talk a little bit about the dangers of premarital sex and why as men we should be avoiding it, and what we can do and how we should be stepping into the purpose for our lives. So incredibly powerful conversation, guys. Obviously, like we ask every single episode, if you're getting value out of these conversations, you can help us and support us in one of two ways. First off, by leaving a 5-star rating or written review, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, whatever platform you are listening to. But more importantly, if there's somebody in your life that needs to hear today's conversation after listening to it, please do us a favor and share this conversation with them. Well, let's get into today's conversation with returning guest to the Superhuman Life, Rob Kowalski, talk about why we need strong leaders, strong male leaders in the Christian church. Hope you guys enjoy. Rob, my brother, welcome back to the Superhuman Life. How you doing?
So good to be here, man. Definitely someone I look forward to connecting with. I really feel a kindred spirit with you. And we've never met, but you're just somebody that I enjoyed talking to the few times.
Yeah, I really do too, man. We were chatting a bit, and it's kind of like we just literally just picked right up from over a year ago. So for those of you listeners that are new here, Rob is one of our returning guests. So as we've been, Rob, as I told you when I reached out about getting you back on, we're coming up on 100 episodes, and for some people hitting 100 episodes like maybe isn't a big deal. For me, like I'm celebrating it because it showed obviously a level of consistency, and starting this podcast has changed my life in many ways. So I've really been excited about getting some of what have really been some of my favorite conversations back on the show, and that's kind of what I'm doing here with the podcast now. Is I'm just having the conversations that excite me. and very fortunate that it's beginning to show some interest, or other people are interested, I guess, in learning the same things that I'm as well. So we're excited to just kind of, pick back up where we left off last time. But we spoke in July of last year, and obviously it's a somewhat of a different world that we've been living on. So to kick it off here, man, just how has kind of the last year, year and a half been for you and CityFam? How have you guys, navigated, what's been going on in the world, and what good has come out of this? Let's look at it, glass half full. There's plenty of places you can go talk the negative side of things. Let's keep it, optimistic here today. So yeah, what's the last year been like, and what good has come out of it for you and your organization?
Yeah, so the last year's been very productive, actually, for us professionally. We've been able to expand and get the message out a lot broader. I guess because we had to. We were more of a local. We always had dreams of being having chapters in other cities, but for the most part, Baltimore, and we had some events going in Houston, but really not a lot of other places. So in the last year, we've got a lot more organized as far as being able to scale into other places, a lot more people even internationally knowing about who we are. And then personally, I thank God I'm an introvert, because I do get my energy by being alone. So and I spend a lot of time alone working, and in the office is a ghost town now. Where I'm at, used to be probably 50 people in here a day. Now there's like 5 of that. So but I've been super productive, man. Like I got that vision, and thank God, like I know exactly where I'm going, and I work hard on it. But I'm looking forward to all the things that we've missed, like the concerts, and then we're starting to get back there. I don't know how it is. Well, Florida, you guys have been back, actually.
Dude, we've been land of the free, bro. I've talked about this quite a bit. I'm incredibly fortunate and feel extremely blessed to live here with Governor DeSantis. But for me, I've been a at-home working entrepreneur, for 8.5, 9 years. So when that happened last year, it was no real change for me. And honestly, like I haven't put a mask on my face since I think August of last year. Like I just operate as normal. If somebody asks me to put it on, I smile and wink at them and say I can't. I just keep going on with my day. Very fortunate I haven't had anybody like overly harass me. I think I had to leave Trader Joe's once, and it's the only place that I've been asked to leave in like a year and a half.
Good for you, man.
The Trader Joe's. So yeah, it's been very nice, and the weather's turning here, so it's finally like cooling down a bit. It was 95 like last week, but we've been waking up in the 60s. I was shocked to hear you call yourself an introvert. Like, have you always identified as an introvert? Or?
I didn't know I was. I thought I was an extrovert, and then I didn't. I guess I just, because I can turn it on in public settings, but it drains me eventually being in crowds. So I like being alone, and I feel energized being alone. And I didn't realize that was the definition of an introvert. I just assumed an introvert was somebody that didn't have good people skills, and they were just kind of like quiet. But I think they might call it a professional introvert. I don't remember what the term is, but it's somebody that can turn it on in public settings. And I can be, very social, and I like being around people, but not for necessarily long periods. I'm usually the first person to leave CityFam events. So I'll just peace out, because I know, in addition to that, I just know it's trouble after a certain point.
Exactly.
I'm like, let me just dip about 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I think I've called it an extroverted introvert.
That might be it, actually. Yeah.
But on the same thing, if people hear that, like, think you're an introvert, like you talk for a living, like you got a podcast, you got a media company, et cetera. And it's like, I can turn it on when it's needed.
Yeah.
But I'm the guy, like at a party, like at a social setting, like I'm much more comfortable finding one person and going in a corner and going deep into a conversation, as opposed to kind of being like this butterfly, like in a group. Like, I don't know. I don't really thrive in those type of settings. Put me on stage with a mic, like I'll work the crowd for sure. But in like more of like a social setting, like I'm just, I don't know what it is, but it's not my wheel.
I'm the opposite. I wouldn't want to, if I sat there and went deep with one person, I would feel like there's things going on that need me. Like I'd have to go around and touch everybody. Like, like I want to make sure everybody's having a good time and everything's happening the way that it's supposed to. And That's pretty much the way at all my social events is the way I operate. And it's weird because it goes by and then you don't really feel like you necessarily really connect it with anybody. So I don't know if that's a great strategy on my part, but that is how I've always been, where I'm just kind of like, all over the place. I can't stand sitting still at an event.
Yeah, no, that's I'm very, very, very similar there. But you talked about how you guys have been growing and scaling the organization, your nonprofit CityFam. We talked a little bit about it last time we had on. We spent the majority of that time talking about your book Why Waiting Works and the dangers of sex, and we unpacked your story here a little bit. I want to spend some time today talking about CityFam, talking about this new method that you're working with churches and whatnot, and kind of get into like the genesis of all of this. So if you can, maybe Rob, kind of share a little bit about the story behind CityFam, like where it kind of started and evolved from, and why it was really fulfilling. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were really trying to fulfill a need or a hole that you saw in the church community. So yeah, pack that here for a little bit for us today, and then we'll kind of we'll zoom in when necessary and make it fun and enjoyable for everybody.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. So I met Jesus when I was 27 years old. Before that, I was a nightclub promoter, the biggest in Baltimore at the time. I was a stripper before that. So I just very popular, very active social life, a lot of casual sex. Just my life.
You're
was
in
a
the
party.
phone book, right? I always giggle when I say that because it's like we get it because
I made it. Mom, yeah, Mom, I made it. Look, no, but no, my life was a party, and I liked being me. In all honesty, I loved it. I loved the persona I'd created for myself, and I met Jesus. Radical conversion, road to Damascus experience, got baptized in the Holy Spirit, prophesied, just crazy. Went from one day not even thinking about God to the next day being completely sure that Jesus was who he said he was and that he had a plan for my life. So I did this real hard turn, this 180, and broke up with my girlfriend. I quit promoting. I just commit in my mind. I was like, I'm going to be the best. I'm going to live by this book. I'm going to be the best possible Christian I can be and do whatever it takes. So literally was abstinent for the next 6 years. I cut off all my friends because they were all partiers and I knew I couldn't really hang out with them or and walk this narrow path. And I got very lonely quick. Within about 2 weeks, I was like very lonely because my social life came to a screeching halt. I didn't even know how to live as a Christian. I didn't know any Christians. I started going to this church. I liked the Sundays and the things that I was learning about God. And I thought the people were very nice, but I just felt like they were very different than me because I had not been raised in a church and I just didn't relate to them. So I assumed, okay, what made my story unique was that God told me that he had a person for me, a woman. And if I waited, he would bring her to me. So if he hadn't told me that, I certainly would have dated at this point out of loneliness. And I'm sure I would have fell back into having sex because even if I was attempting not to, I just was so weak in that area that it would have just happened. But he told me that he had someone. So that compounded the problem of loneliness because I didn't have that as a crutch. And now I became very hungry for community. I was like, there's got to be other people out there like me that aren't, kind of this not religious, but still following Jesus. And I started looking for them. I started going to like young adults groups, Christian coffee house, anywhere that I heard there was something that maybe that would be appealing. I went to it and I couldn't find anything. So then my strategy became to stay out of trouble and don't sin. And eventually God will give you a wife. So I just kind of started isolating inadvertently. And I started going to the movies on the weekends and just trying to stay out of trouble. Every 3 months or so, I would get so pent up with energy. I'd go to the bars and I'd meet up with some old friends. I'd drink too much. I'd get scared that I was going to sin. And I'd stay in for another 3 months. Pattern would repeat. This lasted 6 years. Eventually, I just couldn't take it anymore. Decided to give myself some freedom and I went back to the bars on the weekends because I wanted a social life again and just backslid really, really badly. After that happened, so I kind of made a mess at that point over the next few years. It just slowly spiraled. It just, started with me hooking up with a girl, broke my 6-year streak, and then a second girl about a month later. And then it just started becoming really frequently, almost every weekend or sometimes even, multiple girls a weekend. And I just, over the time, I ended up right back to where I started, where I was just like very far from God and, very disillusioned with everything. My dad got stage 4 cancer in 2010, diagnosed, prostate cancer. And through a series of events around that, God really humbled me, brought me to my knees, and I rededicated my life to him.
How long was this going on? So you had that 6-year streak, that 6-year abstinence. Like, how long was, the time of you, called backsliding, or returning back to your, your old patterns of behavior?
It was 5 years. And it, so like, I left a lot of details out just for the sake of time. So in 2006, I was leading a small group. I was leading a Bible study. It was it was kind of edgy, and we were meeting at this coffee shop. But I really felt like God was giving me the green light to go back work in the nightclub scene again, which sounds crazy, I know, but I prayed a lot about it, and I really felt like He gave me the green light. So I started promoting again. I literally took over the nightlife in Baltimore within months. People didn't even know who I was when I re-entered the scene, but within like 3 months, I was running everything again. And but I was completely committed follower of Christ, leading a Bible study. I moved the Bible study into the nightclub on Thursday nights. So Saturday's the hottest club in town, 800 people coming. Thursday nights, we're reading Purpose Driven Life, and we're going out and feeding the homeless after. And I told my doorman, I said, look, if anybody comes on Saturday nights, I said, if anybody comes from the Bible study, let them in for free, treat them like VIP, don't make them wait in line. And that's what we did. And all of a sudden, my Bible study blew up. I had drug dealers and strippers coming to the Bible study. It became like the cool thing to do is go to the small group. But it was so edgy, and I had no accountability, nobody mentoring me or anything. I ended up sleeping with a girl, and then the second girl, and then it just started out. Here I was back in the club scene. And then once I stepped down from leading the small group at that point, once I slept with that second girl, and it was like going back into the shadows where nobody was really looking at me anymore. I wasn't leading the small group now. And it was like the devil served it all up to me, and I just took it. So that lasted, again, slowly spiraled over 5 years. But by that fifth year, I was just very far from God. I'd gotten a DUI, just a bunch of stuff, girl problems and everything else. So when I rededicated, I got very involved in the church that I'd been sporadically going to. And, but I went through that exact same period that I'd gone through the first 6 years, where I was like, every weekend I'm sitting around with my thumb up my ass, not sure what to do or who to do it with. There was just nothing going on. Church people were great, but they were boring. There's not a lot happening. So, and I just knew I couldn't go to the bar, but there really wasn't a whole lot else. So I was renting Redbox movies every night. And I tell the story where I rented every single movie in Redbox, to the point where I rented Dolphin Tale one night because it was the only movie I hadn't seen on like a Friday night. And I was so mad because I'm like, here, I'm a pretty cool guy. I was running the nightlife in my city, and this is what I'm reduced to. Like, these are my options. And I was like, man, this is a real problem. Like, how do churches or even recovery groups, how do you expect people to do this if you don't give them something to replace the bad behavior? Mm-hmm. So that's when I was like, I got to figure this out. So I was complaining to somebody. They said, look, you were a promoter. Why don't you start organizing some social events to give yourself something to do? And it was kind of like a light bulb went off. So that's exactly what I started to do. Is I just started organizing what we call Fun Without Regrets social events. And I did it for myself because I did want, I was working hard all week. So I wanted something to look forward to on the weekends. But I also knew that I could get my friends that did not know Jesus to a social event a hell of a lot faster than I could get them to a church, because I'm an evangelist. So from the moment I met Jesus, those first 6 years, and even after I started the backside, I was still trying to reach the lost. And I would invite people to church with me, and they would very rarely would anyone come. If they did come, it was almost just to be polite. Mm-hmm. But I never saw life change. So then I started doing these social events. I started inviting my friends from church that were basically going through the exact same thing I was. They were bored and lonely on the weekends, many of them. I started inviting them to these social events that were pretty fun because they weren't used to like real fun. And I had been a promoter, so I could organize some fun stuff. And then I started inviting my unchurched friends to those events, especially the ones that there were people that were on my radar, and I could see that they were hurting. Maybe they were going through a breakup. They might've been struggling with some addiction, and I wanted to be there for them, but I didn't have the bandwidth to disciple them one-on-one, a lot of them. So what I would do is I'd just be like, hey, look, this is where we're going Friday night. Why don't you come out and see this band play with us? And then they would come out and they would get around this healthy group of people. And next thing you know, they would end up in church. And they would a lot of times they get saved. And then next thing you know, they're working the next steps table. And I'm like, bro, this is what I've been trying to do for the last 10 years. So it became this ministry for me. Not only was it, very life-giving to me because it was made my social life very intentional, but I was starting to make an impact. And over time, I've seen hundreds of people get saved through CityFam. And then we developed it into a method for churches to follow. We call it the Go Method. And we're in the process of building that out. And I really believe it has the potential to lead millions of people to the Lord once we get it into the hands of all the churches.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I say this all the time, like, with everything that I'm doing here, through the podcast, through really providing, tools and just having conversations to help men, uplift themselves, find breakthroughs in life. And then obviously Rebuild Recovery, we're singularly focused on helping a guy with a specific problem. So we're doing a lot of good, but people ask me like all the time, like, what's the best thing you get to do? And like honestly, it's like when the message or when the work or with the coaching program brings them either back to Jesus, because a lot of the guys have obviously backslid, which I'm curious about. I want to ask you a question here about that second time of recommitting. So either reintroducing them or for a second or third time, or we're bringing them, we're sharing the gospel the first time, like as a Christian, as somebody that I believe our first calling is to create disciples. Like that is that's the greatest thing that I get to do here with the work. But talk to, if you can, like, where you were at, maybe spiritually and emotionally that second time. And the reason why I think that this is an important question here for me is as the men that I help, there's a lot of men that they're Christians, they're believers, they're doing good in the world, but they feel that their behavior in and around pornography has tarnished the relationship with God. Like they're never going to be fully accepted or fully forgiven. So how are you kind of processing things mentally, emotionally, mentally and spiritually at the time? And then, just speak to those men out there that maybe feel like these things that I'm doing, like I'm never going to be good enough. God is he's given up on me. So if you can't speak to that a little bit, because I know that could really help a lot of men out there.
I mean, definitely bad behavior can cause corrosion in the connection with God, but I remember, like, I was very far from God. I remember seeing people in church worshiping, because I would still occasionally go. I would, like I was trying to figure out that maybe, but I don't even remember feeling that way. When I'd see somebody worship, and I couldn't even remember feeling like in love with God. And I knew I had been years earlier, but I couldn't remember what it felt like. I was so numb from the sin. And, when I rededicated, it was exactly like the prodigal man, where it was like the father ran to me and embraced me. And it was like, I was right back, and I remember talking to my pastor about it. And he said, he makes all things new. I kind of thought I blew it. Like, I thought, like, at that point he was done with me. And it was like, Jesus makes all things new. And I look back on it, and it was actually part of my story, I believe. Like, because when I got back into the promotion, I was pretty self-righteous when I got back into the club scene, because I just stopped having sex for 6 years. So I was pretty proud of myself. I stopped having drugs. I just stopped on a dime from the moment I met Jesus. So if I saw people sinning, I knew all the verses of why they were going to go to hell, and I would tell them sometimes. So when I got back in the scene, and I believe that God placed me there, he wanted to show me, like, bro, you're not as strong as you think you are. And then, if it wasn't for the way, that path that I went down and how I felt about myself, I could never do what I'm doing now, because I needed to know what it felt like to be distant from God, because now I'm around a lot of temptation still, and I never want to get back to that place. So it'd be like the equivalent of Adam and Eve getting back into the Garden of Eden after they took the apple. God kicked them out, but then he allowed them back. They'd be like, I'd like another bite of that apple, but no way, I'm not touching it. So that's kind of what I feel like. So I would say to the men that are out there, it's like, look, God gives us unlimited chances, which is the beauty of the gospel, right? Like, we can just screw up so over and over. Those are consequences to our sin. Like, yeah, I think it can block the blessing, but the moment that you decide, that you want to come back, you're completely accepted. Like, it never happened. God's given me this platform too to talk about sex, and I don't want to share numbers, but I've had sex with a lot of women. He uses, like, the thing that you would think maybe is the worst thing possible to glorify himself. And I think people listen to me because of my experience. It's almost like the people in jail after they've been locked up, they're scared straight. No one's going to listen to a Silicon Valley guy that's never been to jail if he tells you why you shouldn't go to jail. Like, but if you're a hardened criminal and somebody tells you, like, this is why you don't want to do it. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I would just tell the men, in God's economy, it's just different.
Jesus makes all things new. I feel that part of the reason why, we've been able to have, the level of success that we had in such a short window of time is what I had to go through to step into this role. Like you get a guy that comes out and he's like, yeah, I was, was a published fitness model. I was dating some of the most beautiful women in the world. It's not like I didn't have trouble finding women or having sex. Like that's not why I sought out pornography. So when I hate saying this, you see a moderately attractive or somewhat good-looking guy. I don't even know if people would agree with that, but I've been told that before. So just repeating what other people tell me. But you see a guy out here talking about like you shouldn't have sex. I'm obviously stealing from your work here, but like porn doesn't make you a man. There's nothing manly or masculine about consuming pornography. I had to break my body down completely. I built up this incredible physique that most people would never be able to accomplish. But now I can stand in a position of authority where I've gone I've gone down these avenues, and I can sit here and tell you that facing the darkest demon for me has what radically has changed my life.
So let me just clarify: it's sex outside of marriage, guys. So like once you get married, have all the sex. That's the point. Not having sex before marriage is going to really provide the clarity and the pathway for you to find your person, your best friend that you're physically attracted to long term with. That's going to help you, be that perfect match to help you achieve your purpose. But when you have sex before marriage, it just clouds everything. You get soul ties, bonded to the wrong person, and very often drift into a marriage with someone that you're not going to be completely happy with. That's why.
So let's go there though. Let's let me have you kind of expand on that a little bit. You shared a post here, the last day or so, having, God, I'm gonna misquote it here. Having sex with somebody can make you feel like you're in love with them when it's really only lust. So unpack that a little bit more if you can. What are some? I mean, I know we talked about it, pretty extensively on the first episode here, so I don't want to go, I don't want to spend too much time on it. But what are some of the dangers of having, whether it's emotionally, whether it's spiritually, why do we need to wait?
It's all biology. I mean, so I didn't understand any of this stuff when I first started. I just did it because God told me he had somebody for me, and I was like selfishly wanted to wait for him to give me my wife, someone that I'd never been in love. So that's why I waited. But over time, I really started to understand it. And it was from living at the polar ends of the spectrum, from being very promiscuous to being abstinent. You start to see things from a unique perspective, I would say. But all my past relationships, I started out with having sex early, and a lot of times what would usually happen when I would have these, when I would have sex fast, is I would lose interest the moment I ejaculated. I just, a lot of one night stands. But sometimes there would be girls and we would continue sleeping together, and then we would drift into a relationship. And a lot of times it was kind of like I still knew that I wanted to maybe sleep with other women or date other women, but I felt obligated at some point, maybe the 3-month mark, 6-month. You can only play that non-committal game for so long. And then you start feeling like a douchebag. You're like, oh, this girl's put up with a lot of my crap. She deserves to be my girlfriend. And then you make her your girlfriend or sometimes even your wife out of obligation. And that's not a good place to be. So, people sometimes doubt what I say, but all we have to do is look at the numbers. 97% of the population does not wait to have sex before marriage. The divorce rate's 50%. And then of the 50% that stay married, many of them aren't happy. Many of them stay together for the wrong reasons, finances, money. And then I think 50% of the 50% that stay married, so they stop having regular sex after year 4. So your odds of being happily married, if you go about it the way the 97% does, is very slim. So all you have to do is look at that. And you can study, I think the divorce rate for people that marry as virgins is only 6%. Yeah. So that at some point it's kind of undeniable. The law of delayed gratification it's a principle, and it applies for everything, including sex, whether it's saving money or getting an education or climbing the corporate ladder. You can't just give yourself instant gratification and then get that long-term happiness too. You got to deny yourself in certain areas. And as a bodybuilder, you understand that better than most. And it applies to sex too. And I wish it weren't true, honestly, because casual sex was easy. It was fun, but it's not productive to what you are seeking long-term.
Yeah. What does it do to the men specifically? I've heard you talk about, the sexual energy, sex transmutation. Speak to that a little bit if you can, because a lot of guys out here are like, well, I need to ejaculate, like I need to release, like, what am I going to do with this stuff down there? Like talk about why that's like,
Yeah.
a false myth out there.
Yeah. It's a great principle, and you can read about it in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill's classic. And he talks about how you can harness it. You can harness sexual energy. It's the strongest form of all human energy, and it can be redirected towards all kinds of things. So I try not to ejaculate. I'll go, a month or more. Sometimes I'll have a wet dream. Sometimes I will jerk off. I'm not perfect. I'm human. But I do know that there's a hangover associated with it. Like, I can't tell you all the science behind it, but I know that I've been so much more productive in the last 10 years than I was in all 38 before that. I mean, I could look at the things that I did, starting my nonprofit, writing my books, coaching programs, podcasts, whatever it is. It's at some point, I think the evidence is almost undeniable to say, like, yeah, this nofap thing is legit. Sex transmutation is a real thing. Think how much time as men we put into not just sex, but the pursuit of sex, lining sexual things up, DMing girls or looking at pictures. When you make up your mind that you're not going to do it, and then you actually follow through on that, it frees up a lot of energy, a lot of time that you can go. And the way that I don't remember if it was from Think and Grow Rich that I read this, but it's like damming a river. That water is going to build up, but eventually it's going to find an outlet. And when it does, it goes. So that's, for me, it's led me, I believe, to really figuring out what I was put on this earth to do. Because I didn't know 10 years ago. I had some vague ideas of what I wanted to do, but it wasn't like it is now. Like, I'm crystal clear on my purpose for being on this earth. And when I do get the woman, she's going to be this amazing addition to this beautiful cake that I've already baked. She's going to be the icing on it.
She's going to be the helpmate to walking your purpose. That's what I tell men all the time. So I get, obviously coach married men, coach men that are in relationships, coach single men, and the single men are the only one that I can have this real conversation with. I'm like, let's pause even the pursuit or even the thought of dating for a moment, and we can go to Genesis and talk about this. Like, God created Adam. He gave Adam a job, named the animals, and he gave Adam a purpose: tend and protect, or serve and protect the garden. It wasn't until Adam accomplished his job, all the animals were named, and he was walking in his purpose, protecting the garden, that God said, that man that I created, he's not good by himself. Let me bring him a helpmate. So I tell men all the time, I'm like, if you want to find, or you want to find the right woman, or you want God to bring you the right woman, begin to walk very clearly in your purpose. We can just look at the scripture to find that is the way it's supposed to be.
That's the order.
We both had John Gray and Asprey on the episode. So if you guys want the science behind some of the stuff, we, both Dave Asprey and I believe it was John Gray, we get into like how frequent it should be. And John even goes as far as like, it's going to make its way out of it, whether it's, through nocturnal remission or emission. He's even like, sometimes you start secreting it like through your sweat. And like, I'm thinking like, is that why when I'm in the gym, like I smell different than I did a couple of years ago?
But you smell like a hand job, bro.
But those pheromones, like those are picked up like unconsciously through the woman's nature. So when people talk about like, I've gone nofap and now I feel like I'm like I've turned on the attraction like to women, there's some stuff operating kind of underneath the scenes there, subconsciously. It's like, like you're sending off signals that you don't even know about. The woman doesn't even know she's picking them up, and that's what's creating that kind of, that attraction side there.
Yeah, and I think so often, just to go really quickly, just wrap this up, is when you do go back to the natural order of things, like Adam and Eve, he got his job, he got his purpose before his person. I think nobody likes waiting. I don't like waiting. Most people don't. But so people get their person before their purpose, and they never find their purpose. And then they get into these relationships, oftentimes with the wrong person, because they didn't wait. So they got that soul tie, they get that bond, they get into a relationship, then they never figured out their purpose. So they're in this unhappy marriage. They're not doing a job that they like. So they're using football or whatever distractions they can to escape the reality, because they knew something inside gnawing at them, telling them you were here to do something else, and they can't figure it out because they never harnessed that sexual energy long enough, because they just went out and chose a person because they wanted to bust a nut. Yeah. So it's like, you got to get this in the right order, and it's as hard as it is the right way.
Yeah, dude, I was telling you, some of the success we've had here this year with Rebuild, and I know for a fact it's a result of me ending my previous relationship. And And the moment I knew it needed to happen is when she looked me in the eye and said, "You don't have yourself together. How are you going to help anybody else?" And it was like, whoa, like I've been called to do this. Like I truly believe like this is my purpose in the world. And you're gonna live here, like you're gonna live here in the house that I'm paying for and say that to me. Like you like there's no like there's clearly like this is not gonna work. And then breaking that, it's like now clearly fully walking in my purpose and the result has been obviously the success that we're having with the company and the coaching program. So
dude, that's awesome. I remember when you took that leap, dude. It was amazing, and you knew it. And that's the thing. I think we all know deep down what we're supposed to do. It's just having the courage to do it. To step out, because it's like you know it's going to be hard, and you're like, damn, I really don't want to. Like I really don't want to do this, but I know it's what I have to do.
Yeah. Well, if we haven't made anybody uncomfortable yet with talking about sex, let's make them uncomfortable with not bashing the church. We're not talking negatively about the church. That's not how I want to frame this. Sure. We're identifying that there's maybe some things that need to be improved upon, and obviously that's kind of what you're doing with CityFam and the Go Method. But for me, it was interesting because my introduction into Christianity wasn't through boring men. It wasn't through maybe the typical way. Like how I was introduced to Jesus was through really strong, powerful, successful men. So like my first couple months as a Christian, it's like, oh, like actually the people on this side are like the ones that are winning. These are like the people that I wanted to be more like. But you were saying like when you converted, it was like I'm looking at all the Christians. It's like their life is just boring. They don't have any fun. Like,
well, I think they were married too. A lot of the people I met were married, and here I'm an older single, and I just really feel like the older singles in the church are hung out to dry. Most churches have things for kids and they have things for couples, but when you're older and you're single, there's really not a lot. They're kind of like they tell you not to have sex, and they're like, okay, good luck, see you next Sunday. That isn't how the early church operated. If you look at the book of Acts, these people were together every day. They were doing life together. They were always in each other's homes, breaking bread, fellowship, teaching, prayer. They were just together all the time. And it said the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So literally every day people got saved because people are attracted to that. So if you look at like the loneliness epidemic now and the opioid epidemic, if the church stepped up and did what it was supposed to do, those things would not exist. Like we have to not just, I feel like the church has done a good job of feeding people's physical hunger throughout the years, but where it hasn't done a good job is feeding people's hunger for community. And people are so hungry for it right now. So instead of inviting them to your church, why don't you do something that maybe they want to come to? And then, because here's the thing, somebody comes to Jesus, then what? They're going to stay in 6.5 days a week and isolate themselves from the sin. That's what you're telling them? Because that's basically, why is a bar open 7 days a week, but a church is open for a few hours 1 day a week? You wonder why people are in the bars. Well, they do a better job of community than most churches. That's why, because people want to be around people. So we have to do better. And that's what I think the Go Method really pushes against, because it's like, look, we're going to do life together. We're going to get into a small group. Yeah, we're going to do Bible studies and we're going to go to church and all that. But we're going to socialize together. We're going to serve together. We're going to go out volunteer together. And we're going to invite unchurched people into those environments because I can get them into those environments instead of into a building that they probably don't really want to come to. So that's what works for us. And I really believe that's the way that Jesus did it, because if you look, he wasn't inviting people to synagogue. He was like, just follow me. He was just hanging out with people. He let people belong before they believed. There were a lot of people that just hung out with him for a long time before they became believers. Thomas didn't believe in, he was after he resurrected. He still didn't believe. So it wasn't, we're trying to get people to believe before we'll do life with them. Like, they have to become a Christian or we don't want to hang out with you. Like, that's not the way Jesus told us to do this. He said, go make disciples. He did not say invite people to come to you. Go. How are we going? And knocking on doors ain't going to do it, because that ain't working anymore. Nobody wants to see you on the street corner with a bullhorn either. So you have to go in the right way. And the way to go, what I've found that works, is we go to the places, we fish where the fish are. We go to live events, bars, sporting events, wherever I want to go to. That's the beauty of it. Whatever I find fun, I do. I invite some church friends, but then I invite some non-church people. And when they come, the word says where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, Jesus said this, there I am, right? I'm in the presence. So when we get a couple Christians together and we invite a non-Christian, Jesus is there. It doesn't matter if it's a bar. He hung out in places like that anyway. And it doesn't matter if you and I Frank, if we were in a bar together, I guarantee you we're going to talk about God. When I see, you're going to be like, dude, man, I was praying for this thing. And if me and you are rapping about something and there's some non-church person, unbeliever there, and they're within earshot of that, they're listening, and we're not even trying to sell it to them. That's actually makes it more effective, because it's not like we're like, hey, let me give you this track. No, we're just talking as two dudes. They're hearing it, and something's happening in them, and they're like, man, I want that. And then next thing you know, we're like, hey, bro, we're going to go to such and such church tomorrow. Are you interested? A lot of times they're just like, yeah, because they met you and you're cool, you're normal. And then next thing you know, they just start moving with us. And then they end up in church. And again, a lot of times there'll be a seeker-friendly message, and then they get saved, man. Their whole life gets changed. So for us, it's just been super effective. And it's convincing now the churches to notice it and try to implement it, because, like, they're so stuck on this old way of doing things. And even though it doesn't work, the average church leads less than 10 people to Jesus in a year. So even though it doesn't work, they refuse to throw their nets on the other side of the boat sometimes, and try something different. Let's just kind of look at this a different way. A lot of churches believe we're living in the end times. Where's the urgency? Because if you think Jesus is coming back, you really believe that, and you ain't out telling people, like, shame on you.
Do you think that's fear of the pastors, fear of the leadership? Do you think it's egos getting in the way? Like what is making the leaders in these churches, whether it's the pastor? Because it's my understanding, like a church is kind of, it's like it's ran, by the pastor, like it's his congregation. So what is it that's keeping them from being open to trying a new way?
In Baltimore, where we have two churches kind of running the Go method, and it's not perfected. We're still in this kind of beta testing mode. It's been challenging to get them to fully embrace it, because I think they're so still married to the old model. I liken it to this story I heard about. I think it was the French. It was I think the Americans, maybe the American soldiers or the British, were fighting the French and the Indians. And they were, the British were fighting the way that they knew how to fight. They were like marching, and they're getting blasted because the Indians were fighting Indian style. There was only like a third of the Indians that there were of this other army, and they just destroyed them. And then they realized that, they're in some kind of new environment, and they got to fight different, and that's when they started getting behind rocks and trees and stuff, instead of just marching into, the enemies. And that's what the church has to realize now, that there's got to be a different way, and we have it, and I'm noticing it. I'll be honest. I met with my pastor a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, basically, I just kind of, and he's a friend of mine, but I was like, look, I said, if I just made a list of everybody that me or CityFam brought to your church directly, not indirect, because that list would be a lot longer, but just the direct people, and we just looked at their monetary giving, their lifetime giving, money wise, not their human resources that they gave, because that's another value, but just the direct people and the money, we didn't get 1% back. And not to say I did it for money, I didn't, but that shows you how little they prioritized us, versus saying, hey, look, we are a hospital for the broken. That's what a church is. I agree. Yes, you are. But you guys are ambulances. You're bringing us a lot of people. Let me give you some gas money so you can go get some more. They didn't do that. And it's like trying to, even there where it worked, where we probably saw well over 100 people come to Jesus, they still get so like in their holy huddle that they don't wake up and say, this is the Great Commission. This has got to be one of the top priorities. This is the last thing that Jesus said for us. This is the last thing he said before he left the earth. So it's important. Like he could have said a lot of things, but he said, go make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father. And that was the last thing. So we got to figure out how to do it. And if it ain't working, if you're not bringing people to Jesus, if you're one of those average churches of less than 10, then I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah. I want to know what you guys are doing and how it works. But a funny story here, I was actually given this name by pastor, and I think I shared this with you, or maybe somebody else. I talked about it multiple times on the show. I tend to mega church. I mean, we're talking 6. They just opened up, or they're planning to open their 7th location here in the Bay Area. So it's one of these, high production, $1 million facility. Like you're going to a rock concert, for worship music every single Sunday. But like February of last year, I was attending a business event here. It was Clearwater, Florida, so about 30 minutes from Tampa. I knew a lot of the people. People flying in from all over the world. business event was on Saturday. It was on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So everybody was still in town. Sunday night, we went out to dinner Saturday. And a lot of them were, Christian entrepreneurs. And I said, hey guys, I'm going to church Sunday. Love as many of you to join me as you'd like. Brought 24 people to church.
Dude, that's amazing. It's that easy, I think.
One of the pastors goes, yeah, Frank, you're one of those bringers. We really like you over here.
That's amazing, dude. I love it. I think, and that's part of it for us. Like, so the Go method, what we've developed so far, and I'll just tell people, this is how it works. We have a 4-part sermon series that goes over all the reason, the Great Commission, and this is what Jesus told us to do, and he told us to go, and we can see it all throughout the Bible. So we have a 4-part sermon series that we give to a church for them to launch it. At the fourth message, people are given a card where they can check off and say, yes, I'll take the 90-day challenge to do life together. That sermon series concludes right at the time that your small group semester launches, whatever semester that you're in. So now everybody, what doing life together means is that they'll get into a small group, and in that small group they'll do a social event and they'll do a service event over the next 90 days, and they'll invite their unchurched friends to those events. Okay, so now you're going to get an influx of people that probably weren't in groups because they feel inspired. Not only they see this isn't just for you, this is for you to reach all those people you've been praying for the last X amount of years that ain't been coming to church with you. This is your chance to reach them. So this is why you got to be in a group. And I'll just add on to that, because if you ain't in a group, you're probably not going to have anything to bring them into. So you're going to have to be responsible for discipling that person one-on-one, and that's a heavy load. So what the beauty of being in the group is, you got a tribe, and you could just bring people in, and the group kind of collectively embraces them, and it's almost easy. So we get people into their small groups, and then we do these things called a Go Rally. Once a month on a Sunday, or it doesn't have to be on a Sunday. Actually, we found that it's better if it's not on a Sunday, but like maybe on like a Thursday or a Wednesday night, you try to get the whole church out, everybody that took the challenge, and you do this. It's almost like a party, where the first part is you get somebody to get up and they share their testimony, just quickly, 3 minutes maybe, how they ended up in church. Man, Frank invited me to this barbecue or whatever, and then I met these guys, and kind of like your story, and then they might be crying when they're telling the story, and then my whole life got changed and my marriage got restored, and then people are like, they're inspired. And then we draw out the ladder. This is why we do it. And when I say the ladder is part of the Go method, where it's like, look, Jesus is at the top, he's on the 4th rung. That's where we're trying to get people to. Probably not going to get them there without church or small group. That's the 3rd rung, we call community. The problem that most churches make is we try to get people to go from the very bottom of the ladder to the 3rd rung, which is just too big of a step, because they just have all the reasons why they don't want to go, preconceived notions about God and all the things. So they don't know the words of the song. I don't know how to dress. They don't know a lot. So what we're trying to do is get them to take this big first step that most of the time they're not taking. So we add in a 2nd rung, which is a service event where we volunteer together. And the 1st rung, which is the easiest, is the social event, because everybody wants to have fun. And then you get the people that are in church. A lot of times they're bored, they're isolating, trying to stay out of trouble, sometimes falling into sin because of it, like I did. Get them to come down to the social events and get the unchurched person.
So kind of like meet, like you're bringing kind of like 2 ends of the spectrum, like here in the middle, let's all meet in one place, realize, hey, we're all just humans, we're all just flawed by nature to begin with. We have similar goals in life. Maybe we're a little off and different in some of the way we see things, but it's like you make that point of entry like much softer for the people, the non-goers, and then you bring some fun and enjoyment for the people that are just, your 1 hour, 1 hour a week Christians. It's like you show up Sunday morning, but then you're not doing anything else.
Let's say you got a family member, your brother's struggling with fentanyl. Okay, he's getting high, and you're trying to tell him whatever, trying to get him some help. But so you organize whatever, you're going to go to Topgolf with a bunch of guys from church, and then you're like, bro, I'm going to pick you up Friday night, let's go golfing. You don't talk about Jesus. You're not telling them, I'm going to take you around my small group. Like, no, we're going to go to Topgolf. Come around. He hangs around some good people. That one night he doesn't get high, and then because he had something else to do. Idle hands. Everybody knows idle hands are devil's workshop. We're not giving people things to do. I know this because I was that person where I was like, what do I do now? And I white knuckled the shit out of it for 6 years. And then I backslid inadvertently because I could not take it being alone anymore. Now, sometimes people get into relationships to go against that, but oftentimes they date out of loneliness and they get in a baby's mama, or they get into some And sometimes he's not going to give you that person right away. He's going to take you through a wilderness season. Well, you ain't going through the wilderness by yourself. And if you don't have a tribe to do life with, socialize, serve with, on weekends, you might make it for a little while, but eventually you ain't making it by yourself. I love the African proverb: if you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you're going to go make a far journey, which, a lot of times being a committed follower of Christ is a far journey. It's a long journey. It's not sanctification. It's a long process, and you need a tribe to do life with. So you got to have that. And the go method just makes it very intentional. So we draw out the ladder. That's the second part of the rally. The third part is we do recognition. And this is a big part of why people will just do it, because we might all know we're supposed to reach people, but a lot of times we don't. Life gets in the way. But at the go rallies, we're like, hey guys, if you brought a guest to Epic in the last 30 days, will you stand up? And then half the room stands. Everybody's clapping. If you brought 2 guests, stay standing. 3 guests, stay standing. And of course, people clap. 4 guests, John, come up to the front. How did you get 4 guests to church, bro? So now we're changing the culture, because we're like, this is what we're looking for. These are the people. These are the heroes. Hey, how'd you get 4 people? Well, the one guy was my coworker, and I just, I sent him a Facebook event, and people are listening, they're learning. But guess what? It's also doing in the back of their mind, they're going, I want to be clapped for next month. So they're thinking about. Yeah, everybody loves recognition. Then we do a little bit of training at the very end, a little bit of teaching. So at this church we just rolled it out to, we did this first teaching was called it was called Croissants and Donuts, where we had a few people go out into the mezzanine, and then we had 2 groups of people. One stood in a tight circle, and the other one stood like a croissant. And one stood like a donut. And then we told the people, look, when you come back, just go into whatever group you feel like looks more inviting. So that every single one of them wanted the croissant. So it's basically was to say, hey, listen, when you get out to these social settings, I know you like seeing your friends from church and catching up, and that's great. Do that, but also keep your antenna up and be on the lookout for the new people and give them a space that they can enter in. So it was just like this little bit of teaching. And then what we do is we introduce a little bit of competition, where we tell the pastors, or we tell the small group leaders, look, whatever small group brings the most amount of guests over the next semester is going to go to Sweet Frog with the pastor and his wife. Just a little carrot, just to make it a little healthy, fun competition. And then you might get some little smack talking going between some of the small groups, and then you set them loose. Guys, do your social event, your service event, and this is what we're doing. And it's worked really well organically at Epic. Now we're putting this, that's the church, my home church, but now we're putting the system behind it. And I'm really excited, because I do believe that every church in the world could follow this. And it is that ambulance to the hospital. It's a way to go out and reach the people, meet them where they're at, and then build a relation. It's like almost like we model a life that they can say, I could do that. Actually that looks like fun. Because I'll go to bars with my CityFam friends, and there'll be 50 of our 100 of us there, and I'm enjoying myself. I like being in a bar as a single guy. I don't like going to a bar by myself. I hate it, because I'm the one guy trying to go this way. Everybody's going this way. But when I'm going this way with 50 or 100 people, we're changing the temperature. We're a thermostat now. And then people are seeing us, and they're like, a lot of times if they're wanting some kind of change in their life, it's very easy for them just to jump on. And we're not even saying like, hey, come to, a lot of times we might not invite them to church very soon in the relationship, but we might be like, hey, we're going to go to Special Olympics next week and volunteer. And then they'll be like, man, I've always wanted to do something like that. And then that's really where the Spirit gets them. The Holy Spirit gets them. If they come to a service event, almost every time they're going to end up in church, because they start feeling different.
Yeah, what you guys are doing, this is, in the business, marketing coaching that I'm doing, like this is the concept, I teach my students. It's like, if you're trying to, market a product or market a business, you have to sell the person what they want and give them what they need. And it's not like a bait and switch tactic. It's not like I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you this one thing over here, and then the minute you blink, I'm going to bring something else, and I'm going to package it in a way to where you believe what you want. So I help fitness people. Nobody wants to join a fitness program for an exercise or for a rep scheme. They want to join a fitness program because there's an outcome that is being delivered to them on the other side, whether it's lose X amount of pounds or put on 10 pounds of muscle or achieve a, shredded 6-pack ab. That's what they want. What they need in order to do that is they need a consistent and structured workout plan based upon progressive overload. They need a meal plan based upon, whatever whatever macronutrients that their body needs, whether it's a ketogenic approach. That's what they need, but they don't want to be sold a meal plan. They don't want to be sold a workout program. They want to be sold the outcome. They want to be sold, I'm going to give you 6-pack abs. It's like here, it's like we know people need Jesus. Every single person in the world needs Jesus, probably more than ever right now. But they don't want to hear that for whatever reason. Either, they had a bad experience with a pastor when they were young. Their parents were, these kind of, Bible thumping, disciplinary Christians are like, I don't want anything to do with that. So they want a place to enjoy themselves. They maybe want deeper connections, more meaningful relationships. They want community. They want a place to go and have fun and do it in a fun way. So it's you're selling people what they want, and then you're giving them what they need.
Love it. Yeah, it's exactly it, man. Meeting that felt need. And I think, again, the church has done this with food. Like we do these food pantries and we do soup kitchens and we go on mission trips and we've met felt needs and hunger. But now the hunger is for community. That's why people are so lonely right now. That's why they're opioid, the epidemic is raging out of control. More people died, I think, in 1 year than in the entire Vietnam War. I heard a stat not long ago. So it's like they're not doing it because there's, there all of a sudden more people are just have addictive behavior than they've ever had. They're lonely. They're bored and they're lonely. And we have to give them things to do. And the thing is fun without regret, which is basically, what we say at CityFam and what the Go method encourages. It takes planning. Fun with regret takes no planning. Okay, I work hard all week. I didn't plan anything. I want to blow off some steam. There's the bar. Or wait a sec, let me get on Tinder and see if I can. Fun with regret is in your face all the time. Fun without regret. Somebody had to think of it in advance, plan it out, organize it, and then probably tell you about it. That's where the church has to be. We have to be planning fun without regrets events and they become fishing holes to invite our unchurched friends to come into where they might meet Jesus and their whole life gets changed.
Powerful. They said one of the first steps for them to do once they bring the guests, them and the guests now go into a group. Are you guys providing the small group curriculum and what's kind of if so, what's the curriculum built in and centered around?
Not yet. No, we wanted. Okay. So I'm working on a book called Go, and it will have a small group curriculum with it. Right now, we don't have it just because of my hands are tied up with CityFam.
Yep.
But I would like to have a small group curriculum designed around the whole program, and eventually we will. With CityFam, I have a small group curriculum that goes with the Waiting Works community. It's called The Truth About Sex, and that works really well for us because we get a bunch of singles together and they're going out and they're socializing, especially if there's bars and all involved, there's a very good chance they're going to start having sex with each other. So we try to at least tell them why they shouldn't, which is the book does a good job of, the curriculum does a good job of explaining to them practically about why you probably shouldn't do this. Now, I'm sure mistakes happen, and we're not the sin police by any stretch, but we try to build it on a foundation of purity, to say, hey, look, let's just respect each other. Like if I'm not going to marry you, I probably, there's a reason why, if I'm not sure about that. So it just causes more problems. And we try to highlight that for the people that are starting small groups in CityFam, but with the Go method, eventually it will have its own small group curriculum. We're just not there yet.
Now you've got this Go method rolled out in 2 beta churches right now.
Yep.
And is it predominantly single people? Is it married? Is it a mix of all the above?
So when we launched the initial challenge, it was at the beginning of the year. All people across the board took the challenge. The people that we've really found that are the most active are the single people because they're doing it a lot of times for themselves. Like I did when I started doing these social events. Some of it was very selfishly because I was bored. So I knew I had a chance to invite my unchurched friends and potentially lead them to the Lord. And that was definitely a motivation for me to do it. But a lot of it also was just for me because I just wanted something to do. Now, couples, in all likelihood, they're not going to be the ones to go out and organize all the events because they don't need it as much. They have someone to spend time with. They have a husband or a wife to chill with, go to dinner with. So they don't need community quite the way that singles do. So we find that singles are definitely the ones that are more active.
Yeah, brother, that's fantastic. With, I know you said that you feel this, and obviously it can be utilized and, taken advantage by every church, but size of churches that you've rolled it out and kind of your vision, like, what type of churches or size do you see this really taking off in?
Man, I want to work with any pastor that's hungry to reach the lost, because there are a lot of pastors that when they get bigger in the bigger churches, they get complacent and they forget that there's a whole world of people out there that don't know Jesus. But God's given me such a passion for the churches. A lot of times I'll drive by these little churches and my heart just like, I almost feel sorry for them because they don't know how to reach the lost. They're trying to rely on this old whatever, but they got to engage their people. It wasn't supposed to be, I don't care what your mural says anymore. They're not coming. You could put the most clever thing on your mural that's funny and clever, and the people aren't coming anymore. We have to get the people in the body of Christ to go out and do exactly what we were supposed to be doing all along. And like, I don't know the people in your network, and your pastor doesn't either. So I'm not going to be able to reach them, but you can. And that's what we have to set people up. We can't. And I even, I was at a church recently, and the guy was telling his congregation to go. He was talking about this, but he wasn't telling them how. And if you don't tell them how, you're not setting them up for success. I remember when I became a Christian, I was out there, I was trying to reach people. I remember drawing the bridge illustration on a napkin in a bar one day. It was so awkward. And nothing, I was not seeing anybody come to Jesus, and no one's life changing. So we can't just tell people go out and like, it's got to be a framework. It's got to be an operating system that we use. And that's what the Go method is. This in the same way that your computer uses Windows, you use the Go method to fulfill the Great Commission. We have it for you. So we're in the process of making it tight, because right now it's not buttoned up completely, but by the new year it will be. But if any churches are out there and they're willing to be a beta church and let us test this out, I would love to work with you. Any pastors out there.
So we do have pastors that listen to the show. I know that for a fact, because I have conversations with them weekly. So if there's a pastor, or even if there's a member, whether he's in the leadership at his church, or maybe he's got a relationship, or maybe he wants to find more information out to bring it to his church, where can people get connected with you or learn more information?
Yeah, that's great
about this.
So I'd love to have people, they could just email me, or actually better yet, DM me on Instagram. It's at Rob B. Kowalski. Just drop me a Instagram message and I'll see it right away and get back to you and give you some next steps. I can send you a video to show your pastor, or if you're a pastor, we can just talk about next steps. But if anybody's out there that you've heard me mention CityFam a few times, CityFam is the nonprofit that I started. It's almost a parachurch ministry, but it's just really, we're not faith-based technically, on purpose. And we're just a group of people that are committed to doing life together and becoming the best version of ourselves and trying to enjoy the process. So that they can go to the Facebook group on CityFam. It's 100% free to join, or you can just go to friendswithbetterbenefits.com. We bought that URL and it just takes you directly to the Facebook group. We also have the Waiting Works community on Facebook, which is people that are waiting to have sex until marriage, or at least trying to wait. We have about 2,900 people on there right now, and that's free to join. So they can go to any of those places. But specifically for the Go method, drop me a DM on Instagram and I'll give you some next steps. But that is my passion.
Yeah, that's amazing. And guys, we'll link all that information. We'll link Rob's first episode down in the show notes as well. I believe it was episode 36. Like I said, it was back in July of last year. I want to talk to the men here, though, just specifically the men that are listening to this, whether they're, interested in the Go method or not. Like, there's a need for strong Christian leaders, men specifically, in the home and just in the communities. And, I know I was sharing this stat, you probably know better than I do, but I think it's something, when the husband or the male of the family gets saved, it's like 91%, probability that the family is going to follow. When you flip that around and it's a female first, it's like a 14%. Yeah. So, I'll give you the floor here, just kick him in the ass if you need to, or talk softly and gentle if you want to, but just give a word of encouragement, inspiration to the men out there of why we need to start taking action on these things.
It's what you said, man. It's so important. Women want to follow, but they need men worth following. And the culture that we've been living in, maybe contributed to, I know I did, is it's like a welfare society where we're just taking the welfare checks, we're taking the food stamps, and nobody's working, and we're not becoming this better version of ourselves. We're not self-actualizing because we're just picking up the rotten fruit off the ground. And it's time for us to say, no, we're not going to do it anymore. We're not going to take the welfare. No. And the welfare, what is it? It's the easy thing. It's that girl that you could sleep with. She's not going to require anything from you. It's porn. We have to rise up and be the men that we're called to be. I mean, that we're in perilous times. Jesus is coming back soon. We have to do it now. And men will be the ones to lead the charge. I mean, right now we have a lot of women in CityFam because they respond to the waiting message more than men. But man, if men stepped up and did it, I prayed that for strong men all the time. Because that's, when I connected with you, I was like, dude, this guy, it's like, I saw you, man. I'm like, we got to get him in CityFam because you're a leader. And a lot of men out there are leaders. We just have to step into that and act like it.
Yeah, brother. And I wish I had more time, energy, and to commit to it because I'm such a fan of what you're doing. Obviously, I'm connected with the right people. I want to see you grow. And some of you guys out there, like I'm calling you out specifically. Like I've had individual conversations with people that I know are going to hear this right now. Reach out to Rob. Like you need CityFam in your life. You need to be a chapter leader or whatever it's called there. Because it's incredible what you're doing. I mean, it runs so parallel and in line with what we're trying to create here as well. And I just think I think it's only getting started for you, man. I'm really excited to watch you continue to grow and just impact and change the world. So we're gonna end it here with we have a last question. Obviously, I asked you last time as well. I don't remember your exact answer, but I'm curious how it's changed. I'll have to go back and rewatch that episode, but. So we've shared all the information. Everybody knows where to connect to you. So make sure you get connected with Rob. Listen to his podcast. Listen to the first episode that we had him on if you guys haven't checked that out yet. But obviously, Rob, the title of the show is The Superhuman Life. It's been a result of my life's journey and transformation. But when I talk about living a Superhuman life, for me, it's more of a belief system. It's how I try to show up every day and live out this purpose. And it's the belief first that we all were placed on this earth for a very specific purpose. So there's a calling on each one of our lives. We then though have to take some of that responsibility. We've been given this vessel, so we need to build our body up, through fitness. We need to be dedicating ourselves to our work and to our mission and to our purpose. And it's the combination of those two things: the understanding and belief that God created you for the purpose, but He's given you all the tools and everything within you to bring that to the world. And it's when those two things are combined and fully, manifesting themselves to their fullest nature. That is what I believe is a superhuman life. So I like to get the guest take here. So as we bring it home here, Rob, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Yeah, wow. And I forgot you asked me that question last time. I guess I would say, I heard a really interesting quote from a guest that I had on my show recently, and he said, it's throwing yourself in the struggle to make sure that tomorrow is better than yesterday. And I was like, man, that's good. Like that's really what it's about every day. It's just trying to be continuously improving and then live a life of no regrets. Like I want to get to the point where I'm at the end and I'm like, I left it all on the table. Like that to me would be a superhuman life. Like Paul said, I fought the good fight. So I'm just trying to make sure that I'm thinking with the end in mind. Because for so long I didn't. I thought with the moment in mind. And now I would say the superhuman life is that. It's just like being very intentional with everything that I say everything as much as possible of what I do.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love that thinking with the end in mind. I don't know if you're an Ed Milet fan, but talk about him a lot on the show. He's a huge inspiration for me in my life. But he talks about his definition of heaven is like you die and you meet God, and he introduces you to the version that He created of you.
Gosh, yeah.
And his goal is to meet that person and be an identical twin, because hell would be to meet that person and not recognize a single thing about them. Like he wants to be able to meet that version or meet the ultimate version that God created and be like, dude, I've been waiting to meet you my whole life. I've been chasing you down. And he wants to flip it and have that version of himself be like, I've been watching you, man. It's so nice to meet you. Welcome. And
I love
dude,
it.
It just gives me goosebumps. Literally.
I know, dude. Look, I'm the same. I heard, just to add on to that, I heard, I don't remember what preacher it was. I might have been Andy Stanley, but he talked about in the Bible, and he talks about hell. It says there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And he talks about the gnashing. He goes, when do you gnash your teeth? He's like, when you intensely regret something, you're like, ah. And that, what you just said, imagine you meet the person and it's, you see what you could have been and you have this intense regret. That's hell. You gnash your teeth. You're like, oh, because you just regret so bad. And that's really it. It's the pain of discipline versus the pain of regret. Those are the two types of pain. We have to embrace the pain of discipline every day to avoid the pain of regret. And it ain't easy, but together, right? We're in it together.
Amen, brother. But you gave me one more question that I want to circle back with, and I feel it's an important thing, and it may challenge you a little bit, but being a Christian isn't easy. So
yeah,
with this Go method and using the fun to bring people in, are you concerned with once they get in and they realize that it's difficult and challenging, that it's gonna, I don't want to say drive them away, but how are you managing that, I guess, at the beginning with the understanding that, like, hey, we're gonna have some fun, but like this life is gonna be hard. It is gonna be challenged. Like, have you thought, and have you planned that into the method?
It's tricky for sure. So for me, that definitely helps me, gives me a lot of motivation to walk the way that I do, because I know that people are probably going to do about half of what I do right, twice what I do wrong. So even though I'm never pushing people from CityFam into waiting, because I don't want to make anyone feel wrong, the waiting trickles down into the culture and becomes, people just kind of straighten their back and they act different when they come around CityFam. But a lot of times people will come out and they might be not there yet, and they might be behaving in a certain way. But as long as we outnumber the people that are not there yet, and we tend to do that, so there'll be a lot more Christians than non, then usually those people will rise versus pulling people down. But even sometimes, when Jesus said, he's like, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves, that doesn't sound safe to me. When you're a sheep around wolves, you might get ate. So we, as Christians, I think so many Christians want to play it safe, and that's not what Jesus called us to do. Look, Jesus died for our sin. He's a lot more worried about somebody dying and going to hell than he is about you sinning and having to ask for forgiveness. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not condoning sin, because there might be some consequences with that, but I have to go and, and reach people. And sometimes I don't want to. It's much easier to sit in church in my little holy huddle, as I mentioned, and speak my Christianese with everybody that believes what I do. And I think that's why Christians do that, is because it's the path of least resistance. It's like we get into our safe bubble and we're like, whoa, don't go to the barbershop. You might get a haircut. Well, you might reach a barber. I don't know. Like, so we have to do it the way that Jesus said to do it. And he always put himself in environments where no one else was going. And the religious people didn't understand it then, and they don't understand it now. If you remember, they were like, well, what's he doing hanging around those people?
Yeah.
If he's the Son of God, why is he there? Those are notorious sinners. He said it's not the healthy, the doctor's sick. So are you putting yourself around sick people intentionally for the purpose of hopefully introducing them to the Lord? Because if you're not, then I would say you're not really doing it the way that Jesus said to.
Absolutely, brother. Amen. Dude, this was so much fun. I could talk to you like forever. We're definitely gonna have to do this more frequently. If it's just connecting offline or doing more conversations like this. And obviously I want to bring you into, the men at Rebuild and have you, speaking to them as well. So we're definitely gonna, stay in touch. We won't go another, year plus without linking up.
I'm gonna get you on my show.
100%. So I appreciate you so much, guys out there. Obviously, today was incredibly valuable. I hope you got something out of it. I hope it, spoke to you. I hope it maybe was that sense of source of inspiration to maybe start going a little bit deeper in your faith, start going a little bit deeper in some of the ways that you're living. And obviously there's tools and resources here. So if you're interested in what Rob is doing over that CityFam, make sure to check them out. If you want more information on the Go Method, go check him out at Instagram. We'll link all that information out there. And if you guys are continuing to find value in these conversations, you want to help us continue to grow this mission and grow this message, you can help us in one of two ways. First off, if you haven't done so yet, what's wrong with you? Leave us a 5-star rating and written review, only if you're getting value. If the show sucks, tell me that as well, so I know how to improve it. I'm not scared of a 1-star review because I need to know how I can improve. But more importantly, if there's somebody in your life that needs to hear this message, do us a favor with sharing today's conversation with them. But for Rob Kowalski over at CityFam and the Go Method, Frank Rich, we love you guys. We'll see you next week.